All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from, and I like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And this is going to be, a quick response to, the video that resurfaced of the woman that had the dream that, her and her husband, received the mark of the beast. And also, the AI video, that came out, because as we know, that time is vastly approaching us upon us, and we're just hoping, to be delivered, to endure, that difficult time that is about to befall the planet Earth, man, because we're all going to be tried, once that time comes. And that dream that woman had, again, that's going to be the mentality of most people. They're going to get it primarily to do what? To feed themselves. If they have children, they're going to want to feed their children, and that, just like, if I'm not mistaken, it was either, the Apostle Tahar that may have said it. If not, it may have been the elder brother, Amawan Gabar. But either way it goes, man, that's going to be a stumbling block to a lot of people. For men, they're going to want to feed their wives. For, wives, they're going to, want to, feed their husbands. And then, for both, the men and the women, they're going to want to feed their children. They're going to want to survive. Because, again, there is going to be a famine out here. It's going to be extremely difficult. So this quote unquote, normacy that we have now, even though this isn't normal, how we're living, but just as regular day to day, as things are going on now, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be extremely difficult. Paper money is going to be obsolete. It's going to be phased out, and we're starting to see that, because what they stop, making pennies. Eventually, it's going to be nickels, then dimes, then quarters, no change, whatsoever, then eventually, the dollar. So we're approaching that time to where, physical cash is going to be phased out, and what that digital, system, that digital currency is going to be implemented. And how are you going to be able to use that digital currency? By way of an RFID microchip. That's the only way you're going to be able to live and survive in the society to come, as if you have that device, and a lot of people are going to get it. But what? There's only going to be a remnant, that is going to, be preserved, that is not going to receive the mark of the beast. So I'm just going to bring out a couple of scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. I'm going to start with the book of Revelation, chapter 3 and verse 10. And it says, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world, to try them that dwell upon the earth. So each and every last one of us are going to be tried. We're all going to have to, go through that hour of temptation, which is what? Facing the choice of whether or not we're going to get the mark of the beast. They're going to tempt us. But again, the elect, as it stands, they're not going to get it, man. They're going to resist. But the majority of people on this earth, no matter what nationality they are, they're going to get it. They're going to fold, especially, people here in America, man, because America is a very, very greedy, society. Gluttonous as well, man, because I've been seeing a lot of videos on Instagram, and I made mention of it at camp last week, man. Like, why does TV shows like My 600-Pound Life exist? Because it just shows you that people here in America have an insatiable appetite, eating multiple times a day. They say you're supposed to eat 3 times a day, but that's too much. You're not supposed to eat that many times a day. Eating once a day, is, really the best thing to do. But what, once or twice a day, eating once or twice a day is okay. But, these people, they eat, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times a day, man. So this is all they do. So a lot of people that just, live to eat, they're going to get that chip to try to preserve their life, not understanding that once they get it, they're doomed. And that woman, that dream that she had, which she doesn't have, the right names, the correct names of the Lord. And, she believes in hell, which there's no such thing as hell. And I mean hell, a place that's, underground, where you go, where you die, and your soul burns forever. No, man. That's Greek mythology. That place doesn't exist. But what? The lake of fire being America. America is the lake of fire. Because this entire land is going to be engulfed in flames, during World War III, once these nuclear missiles are launched, because the majority of them are going to hit this land and burn it up. And that's going to be the lake of fire. This is what, John the Revelator saw. This is what he was describing. The sea of glass, the elect looking, and seeing Babylon the Great burn, That's the lake of fire. Is no, after you die, your spirit returns to the spirit world. You go before the Heavenly Father, you receive your judgment, and you just wait to come back to the earth, to play it out. But that dream that woman had, again, is very vivid. Now, is that true? What, she saw? And what I mean by is that true, is that actually going to happen to, her and her husband? Who knows? Only the Lord knows. But the one thing she did know is that what she said once she got it, she just pretty much felt like, she had lost hope. She felt hopeless. She said, she felt like, I forget exactly, how she worded it, but pretty much, she was disappointed, like as if, she let the Lord down. I think as the elder, Hawad said, she let the Lord down. Because again, a lot of people that get it, or those of our people, the Israelites, because the other nations, they don't care. They just, irrelevant. But those of our people that at least have a conscience, they're going to know that they did wrong. Because again, the mark of the beast is not sin, but it is a sin to take it, because we're not supposed to make any markings or cuttings in our flesh. Right? So let me see. Let me grab that. In the book of Slakia. So let me do it like this. The book of Leviticus, chapter 19 and verse 28. And it says, "Ye shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor print any marks upon you. I am the Lord." So again, once you get the mark of the beast, you're cutting into your flesh, because how is it going to be delivered? By way of that syringe, that is going to, be stuck into your hand, man. And that's a very large needle, the Karax, as it says, man, that instrument that is going to be, pushed into your skin, man, to deliver that device. And then the Neuralink, we know, again, they're going to have to, cut people's, heads open to, put it in there. But this is what John saw, man. This is a literal thing. It's not going to be anything spiritual like how these other groups teach. It's not a spiritual thing. It's physical, and people are going to get this. People already have it, just like people over in Switzerland and Sweden, they're already ahead of the game, man. They already got it. They're already using it. It's primarily going to be pushed here. And once it's made mandatory here, then that's how we know, that time is upon us. So let's get the book of Revelation, chapter 13, and verse 16. It says, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hands, in their right hand, or in their foreheads. And right, it doesn't matter, what your status is, whether small or great, if you're rich or poor, whether you're free or, you're in prison. It doesn't matter your status, that's going to be, you know, your options. You're either going to get it or you're not. If you don't get it, you're going to die. Just like it says in verse 15, he is going to seek to take the lives of those that don't want to get it, right? So actually jump up. This is the book of Revelation chapter 3. It's like Revelation chapter 13 and verse 15. And it says, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as will not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So, right, those that resist this man's mark, that don't want to get down, with the New World Order, that don't want to receive the mark of the beast, Esau, Edom is going to seek to take, those individuals' lives, which some of the elect are going to lose their life. They're going to be martyrs pursuant to Revelation 20 and 4. Some of our people will be beheaded, but that's going to be their testimony, their particular, trial that they're going to have to go to, which, those of our people that are martyrs, they're going to be dying, honorable deaths, unlike the majority of our people that are going to die, very shameful and grievous deaths, because they didn't keep, the word of the Lord, because they didn't keep the Lord's patience, And this is why they're going to be judged harshly, with the wicked. They're going to receive the very same judgment that Esau is going to get, which is what? Being destroyed, in World War III, being burnt up. So this is the book of Revelation chapter 13, and I'm going to jump to 17. And it says, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So, right, you won't be able to buy and sell once the society fully collapses again. The dollar is going to be worthless. Silver and gold, isn't going to be able to save us, even though now, it's cool to have, because you can still, have a bartering system going on, before that thing is implemented. But, you're not going to be able to, buy anything. You're not going to be able to sell unless you have that device, because it's all about, control. Esau, Edom wants to, control the masses, because again, Esau has a God complex, man. It's like it says, he wants to be like the Most High, which is why he's doing the things that he's doing, and a lot of our people are going to bow the knee to him. They're going to, you receiving the mark of the beast, you're declaring that Esau, Edom is your God instead of the Heavenly Father. Primarily applies, to, our people, because again, the other nations, they don't matter. But those of our people that get it, man, they're going to be destroyed. So let's jump over to the book of Revelation, chapter 14. We'll start at verse 9. And as you can see, the subtitle reads, what? Doom for worshipers of the beast. So those that receive the mark of the beast are doomed. You're not going to be able to cut it out, at the last minute upon the return of our Lord Yahushai. You're not going to be able to, say, I'm sorry. It's too late. Once you get it, that's it. It's over with at that point, So it's the book of Revelation chapter 14 and verse 9 says, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of Yahweh, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. So I'm going to cut it right there. I'm about to get ready to head in. Then, I'm going to finish, in a second. So for now, Shalom.